Welcome back to Adventitious Adventures. I know it's been a while since the last episode had went up. Had some things. We started some sports here at our house and some other, events that were going on, which just made it hard to continue to keep doing this on a more regular basis. But hopefully, things have changed a little bit on our schedules, and so hopefully this will be more of a continuous on a regular basis thing now. As I've always said in all of these, this is based off of our friend group's D&D campaign. This specifically one is our first campaign. We actually are on campaign 3 right now, and you can also find all of these in a more written form at wordpress.com under the same name, Adventitious Adventures, if you'd rather go and read it, or if you want to see what our group is up to now, because it will be a little time before I get, that far through our story. So, feel free to always do that. They're fun. I think that they hopefully encapsulate what we do. We don't play live or anything yet for anyone to watch. We just play for ourselves, but maybe someday that I'll be there, because I'm sure these also, take away some of that as well. But it's been really fun to, retell this story through this version, because I've found things that I forgot about that have kind of reminisce about everything that was going on. So it's been fun, and I'm hoping to continue to keep doing this until we get through everything. On that, let's jump into a little bit of a recap from last week. So last time the party had suffered some miscommunication and split from each other, only to find a few of their members returning, unaware that anything had been amiss. After Nara also returns injured, and speaking of being betrayed by a fake version of Malvis, the party investigates, discovering a duplicate of Mitchum who turned out to be a changeling. Before things could be fully resolved, the city is attacked by golems, forcing the party, along with their new companion Aldrin, into a fight. The battle does not go as smoothly as it should, especially considering Malvis decided that moment to be the best time to reveal his feelings. But the party is eventually victorious. In the aftermath, they see a large force appear, led by a well-dressed man, with a name that sounds reminiscent of one of their own. The story begins again with the party having been approached by a well-dressed tiefling man in front of a vast army. As he introduces himself to the gathered crowd, the party has a moment to realize that among the forces approaching are those of different races, and those they recognize from the land of Askai. The crowds around them have begun to calm slightly, but still seem to be on edge, just from the sheer size of the incoming army. A few moments pass before suddenly the man approaches Malvis with a look of surprise and recognition. He asks what he is doing there, and Malvis explains that he and his friends were there helping the town, before hesitatingly asking how his mother and father are. The man answers they are well, as he comes closer, embracing him in a hug, much to Malvis's surprise. Pulling away, Malvis tells the rest of the party that this man is his brother, affectionately labeled Akur. He asks what he has been doing since leaving their homeland, and Malvis excitedly tells them about how he now has magic, how he was aligned with Ula, but no longer, how he met the party and traveled to the north, and much of the other adventures he had been having. Akur listens in interest for a moment, even after hearing Malvis talk about the princess, making a comment about him being able to meet the best women, to which Malvis blushes, glancing over in Inara's direction. After he is done, Akur tells them he is here on a special mission from their mother and father, naturally assuming that the party is there to help him. He tells them he is there to secure peace with those from Askai, which will benefit the peoples of his land, both in trade and advancement. Malvis tells him that he does not think this is a good idea, but Akur tells him he needs to think of his people. that this kind of selfishness was what got him in trouble, and that he has heard about the conversation their parents had with one of his companions, and his actions did not seem honorable. Trying a different tactic, Akur tells Malvis to trust him, that this could be his opportunity to prove himself and return home. Malvis is quiet for a moment, thinking things over, eventually telling Akur he will trust and follow him, for it is his duty as his younger brother to help him. Akur seems delighted by this, asking who of his allies he feels would be good to bring along or assist them. Malvis tells him that Inara and Mitram should come, but not Chop, and that he is not sure about Aldrin and Saren. For one, he just met, and the other seems to have issues with him currently. Up until now, the rest of the party has not said too much, for different reasons. But hearing their planning, Mitram asks Akur how much he actually knows about the people of Askai. He answers explaining that they have promised his people trade and protection, and that his parents are sure of them helping. Mitram, not being swayed, asks Akur if he values power or protection more than each other, to which Malvis warns not to insult his brother. However, Akur does not seem to be offended, instead urging them to come to the negotiations between his people, Askai, and their allies in the north, reiterating how their goal is to help his lands and people and to expand their reach and care for them. Mitram persists, inquiring how much he knows of the New North. His tone shifting, Akur answers that they will agree to peace, or he and his forces will do what needs to be done. Cutting through the mounting tension, Chop asks if there are people like her in Bashad and Jadura. However, before her question can be sufficiently answered, the party's attention is pulled away by the realization that darkness has spread throughout the city, almost like night. A bitter cold envelopes them as fog moves in, covering the city. Moments later it dissipates, but takes with it the majority of the army, only leaving Akur and a small group of around 20 of his guards. As the party is trying to figure out what just happened, they suddenly hear a scream. Heading to where the distress came from, they find a group of citizens seemingly in shock. In the middle of the small crowd is a woman, shaking with fear, staring at an older man at her feet, who is lying on the ground, missing his jaw. The woman continues to be hysterical, pushing Inara to go to her to offer some support. However, as soon as she comes near, the woman changes, her bones breaking and her body contorting in a way none of the party has ever seen. Inara backs away, but the strange creature of a woman comes after her, only stopped by being impaled on a nearby guard's sword. However, the horror does not stop there. As they watch, the creature/woman pulls her body further onto the sword, towards the guard, before vomiting a strange fluid on him. The guard begins to change, just as the woman did, going after more of those gathered. Terrified and unsure of what is going on, the party runs back to the tavern nearby, moving things to bar the door and telling those inside to stay where they are. Realizing there are rooms upstairs that may not be secure, they decide to split up and secure the area. Having more than likely been in more dangerous situations than his brother, Malvis tells Akur to stay with him before going up the stairs. Watching them leave and feeling frustration at the missed opportunity to talk about their earlier conversation, Inara orders Chop to come with her, only barely noticing Aldrin also following, leaving Mitram and Saren to check on the last room. As Chop, Inara, and Aldrin enter the first room upstairs, they are surprised to find the window indeed open. Quickly closing it, they find a young woman hanging from the frame, calling out and attempting to come inside. She sounds distressed, and knowing what is happening out of the tavern, Chop goes to help. However, regrets the decision almost immediately after discovering the young woman seems to have already been attacked, and only consists of the top half of her body. The woman lunges at Chop, who swiftly manages to move out of the way and chop her head off. However, this does not stop the attack, as the now headless torso continues to advance on the small group, along with the severed head, which becomes a spider-like creature. Thinking fast, Aldrin tries to burn the spider before throwing it out of the window. After a moment, they all manage to push over a dresser on top of the torso, pinning it to the floor and stopping it, before burning that as well, killing it and throwing it out of the window too. When they turn to shut the windows, however, they find that Aldrin has been sprayed in the chest by the strange fluid that had been changing people. In the next room, Mitram and Saren find the window open as well, but the room appears to be empty. Crossing the room to close the window, they are surprised to see a young girl appear out of nowhere, hanging down from the roof. At first, nothing seems to be suspicious about her, other than where she is hanging from, but after a moment she begins to bang her head against the wall, pleading with them for help in a strange, monotonous way. Realizing she must be infected just like the others outside, Saren closes the window, while Mitram moves the large wardrobe in front, barring anything or anyone entering by that route. Malvis and his brother take the last room, going in slowly and looking around. Unlike the other rooms, nothing seems out of place, but not wanting to risk it, Malvis tells Akur to stand in the corner and cast darkness on the room. Still able to see through the magical darkness, Malvis scans the room, but still sees nothing. A second later, however, they begin to hear noises coming from the wardrobe. Staying in the corner, Malvis uses Mage Hand to open the door of the wardrobe, expelling a strange, blob-like creature. It begins to advance towards them aggressively, prompting Malvis to summon a portal and bring forth a lesser demon to help them. This seems to give the strange creature a pause, in which Malvis is able to move out of the way of harm. However, Akur, not having been put into such situations before, does not move so quickly. Turning back, Malvis tries to help his brother, but is instead pushed out of the room by him. As the door shuts behind them, Malvis can hear Akur pleading for help. However, the door remains tightly closed. Hearing the commotion and having taken care of the other rooms, the rest of the party arrives at the scene. They can hear the distressed voice of Akur from inside and see Malvis freaking out, trying to get back inside. The party jumps in to help, but unsure of exactly what to do, they try reasoning with Malvis about staying out of the room, with Inara stepping physically between him and the door, trying to offer some kind of comfort. Only Saren seems to not be as affected, speaking coldly that it is too late. Eventually, the pleas and sounds from inside the room quiet. Realizing there's nothing more they can do, the party moves back downstairs. The reality of the situation at hand weighing on all of them, they do not fully realize that Saren's reflection in a passing mirror is not quite of himself, or that Aldrin seems to be feeling pain in his chest. Once downstairs, they find a group of people also seeming to find refuge inside the tavern. In addition to the couple of Akur's guards that followed them, there's a dwarven female with an order man, an elven couple who seem to be scared, and a shifty-looking drifter man who is sprawled out on one of the tables. One of the guards asks where Akur has gone, looking to Malvis. However, overcome with grief, he does not answer, having only truly been guided downstairs by the help of Inara. The guard senses what has happened and turns to the door, beginning to move the barricade that had been erected in order to leave. The rest of the party try to reason with him, but he persists, till Saren fires a guiding bolt at the man, killing him. This action seems to pull Malvis out of his grief, and he rises angrily against Saren, who does not seem bothered, and insults him right back. The other guard, not wanting to meet the same fate, and seeing that Akur is no longer there, breaks through the conflict and offers his life in service to Malvis. This action seems to surprise everyone, and the proprietor of the tavern takes the moment to ease the tension and offer the party some rest and food. Taking the offer, they sit down and try to make sense of anything that has happened. A moment passes, when the drifter rises from his recline announcing that he has an idea. He tells them he knows of something that can help, but it is contraband and not of this world. Having drawn the party's attention, the man continues, telling them that this artifact, known as a Godslayer crystal, has unique properties and can be quite dangerous. However, it really will only affect those who are connected to a deity. The party at first seems rather skeptical, asking if this is such a good idea, but the man explains that this crystal is just one of many, and that alone it will not cause large amounts of harm, but could help clear the town of its affliction. After some deliberation, the party decides that this could be the way to help the situation. Content with their decision, the man introduces himself as Richter and lets them know that the crystal is across the town in an inn, which he can take them to. The party agrees to take the risk, all except for Inara, who, upon hearing the crystal's name, seems to be much more skeptical than the rest of them. Malvis, seeing Inara's reluctance, also decides to stay, with the intention of finally getting a chance to talk, but does not miss the chance to throw a threat Saren's way before he leaves. The rest of the party follow Richter out into the now quiet streets of Wulfwater. The man makes a remark about breaking a window on the tavern to use those inside as sacrifices to ensure their success, but the party does not agree, much to the man's disappointment. Winding their way through the streets, they eventually stumble upon a humanoid woman who asks them for help. Mitram goes to help her, which seems to be exactly what she wanted, not because she was ever truly in trouble, but more in a sinister way. The woman continues to focus on Mitram, trying to draw him closer and closer, but he is able to get out of her spell by picturing Stephanie. While this seems to help Mitram get away, it also seems to make the woman angry, as she changes into her true form, that of a succubus, and attacks the party. The fight does not go well, with the succubus attacking hard, drawing other creatures to her mission. The party seems very outmatched, but are saved eventually by Richter, drawing her attention away, telling the succubus that they are innocents in a nearby building. Hoping to help their cause, Saren prays to Tempest for help, but does not receive any kind of response, which is troubling. Not agreeing with what is happening, Mitram pulls Richter's attention away, asking where the crystal is located. He tells them it is in a house close by on the bottom floor. While the rest of the party goes to the location he described, Saren turns instead and begins to lead the succubus away back to the tavern, his motives unclear. As the two forms draw near, the people still in the tavern take cover, and Malvis and Inara prepare for a fight. The succubus launches into a battle, going full force after Malvis, who only barely manages to hang on and flee upstairs. Saren, still seeming to play back and forth, also attacks the succubus, only slightly hurting her. Inara, seeing the damage that the woman has caused, jumps into the fight as well, angrily insulting her before attacking. However, the attacks do not seem to be doing as much damage as the succubus is doing towards them. Trying a different tactic, Malvis casts banishment on the succubus, sending her to a different plane. Across the town, the rest of the party is not faring much better. They are taking quite an amount of damage from the rest of the creatures they've encountered. Suddenly, as they are moving, Aldrin has mud creatures spring forth from his chest, where he had been hit with the liquid. Bringing his sword down across his chest, he is able to dispel the creatures and continues to help the others. Eventually, Mitram is able to find the house that Richter had described, and goes inside. He finds the crystal, grabbing it and bringing it outside to the others. As they watch, the crystal begins to pulse and glow, before suddenly erupting with power and dispelling the creatures around them away. Awestruck, but confused by the power, Mitram, Chop, and Aldrin move back through the city towards the tavern. As they walk, the crystal continues to glow and erupt, exploding the creatures that had overtaken the town away into nothingness. Finally reaching the tavern, they watch as the clouds seem to fade away, and the large army they had seen before comes back into view. Inside the tavern, Malvis, Inara, and Saren are surprised to see a Kur emerge from upstairs. As he approaches them, they're even more surprised to see he is unhurt and seemingly unfazed. That episode was one that I kept remembering and then I could never find the information for all the time, and then I was like, was this just a fever dream? Did this really happen? But it obviously did. So I'm glad. That was a fun time. I can't remember. I swore that the Blood Moon episode was our Halloween episode, but then we had this one, and I think this actually was our Halloween episode, so I think I spoke wrong before. I'm not 100% sure now that we've gone through this. I know they happened fairly at the same time. I'll have to find my notes sometime and go through and be like, which one actually was that? But through this one, you got to see a few things. Number one being I know you didn't get to see a little bit more, or didn't get to know very much in this episode, and the last one too much, except for, that he's connected to Persephone somehow, about the character of Aldrin. But we did actually kind of start to get to know him a little bit more in this. It actually is wasn't any of us dying actually and having a new character or anything. It actually was another friend of ours who started joining playing, and so he then all of a sudden was here. So we had to have a reason for him to all of a sudden be there. But he's an interesting guy, stays around for quite a while, and you will start to learn more and more about him and some interesting things about him that he may not know or remember. So there's there's that. So you got to learn a little bit more about his character. You also got to meet and learn a little bit. I know it didn't touch as much in this episode either, about more people from Malvis's backstory or his family as well. Obviously in the form of his brother. You will get to see a little bit more of that brotherly, you know, their relationship a little bit more in the coming weeks. Somewhat, I will say. And so there's that. He's a cool guy, kind of, for as much as you know him, because he's not a main character in the whole thing. But yeah, so you kind of get to see that and see more backstory kind of stuff come out with that. And then it was just interesting. There's still this obvious tension between everyone in different ways. You know, you have that obvious like tension about against each other, like all the things I've said, or their feelings against each other and being, you know, oppositional. But you also have this tension between Malvis and Inara, because they haven't had this conversation about what he just blurted out during the middle of a fight. And that will eventually get, you know, talked about. But it may take a while. I'll just tell you guys that. Anyway, this was a fun episode. I don't know if it was up there with like my favorites or not, but it was really fun to just be able to, you know, we kind of had more fighting and then just some, you know, other roleplay, and all of that was fun. Next time is going to be a little crazy of an episode as well. True fashion, the party gets themselves into a situation that is of their own making and gets detained and questioned in different ways, and that questioning and detainment might not be the greatest thing to happen and may cause some bigger things to happen and feelings, which we will learn then. So until then, roll well, and I'll see you then.